Darin Strauss, who wrote Half a Life, may be one of those people who has suffered complicated grief disorder for a very good reason.
Okay, so what's the book about?
When Darin Strauss, who was an acclaimed American novelist, who wrote books like Chang and Eng and The Real McCoy, when he was 18, he was driving his father's car down a sleepy suburban Long Island lane, and a girl, one of his classmates, swerved into his lane, and he ran down and he killed her. Now, this book is about his attempts to come to terms with the massive devastation, the aftermath of that, the guilt, the pain of her parents, the pain of him.
And does he talk about it all?
Himself.
I mean, does this sort of...
He opens his entire heart. It's a very small book. I mean, it can be read in about an hour and a half, about a huge
And
subject.
what form does it take? Is it in diary form? Is it in first person?
It's a straight memoir, although it does so much more than that. I was going to say it's a bit like confessional literature, but it's much more than that. It's a unique, remarkable and stunning book. It's one of the best books I think I've ever read in my life. Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, says the impact is staggering and unforgettable, and I have to concur with that. One of the things he does in it is he talks about the difficulty of writing a memoir that deals in straight, hard facts when you're actually a fiction writer, when you're used to embellishing things.
So is that what we've had from him so far?
Yes, when you're used to sort of prettifying words. At one point he says, I want to tell you that Celine, who's the name of the girl he ran down and killed, was unusually beautiful. Newspapers around at the time seemed to believe her death was only fully sad if she were outlandishly beautiful. You know, she was the prom queen, she was the beauty queen. You know, and it's sort of talks about how, if you deal, you know, in this prettification of language, if you're a novelist, you know, what happens? You know, how do you then proceed to write a memoir, telling it like it is? And in fact, the memoir, I don't think, can't help but sort of adapt to certain novelistic narrative devices, in as much as when you read any autobiography, it naturally sort of falls into the kind of peaks and troughs of life,
course.
you know? I mean, for instance, he finds out he's being sued for millions by Celine's parents, by a greedy, very 80s kind of lawyer. He finds out the last words in her diary, spookily enough, were, "Today I realise that I'm going to die." Now, that can be read ambiguously, you know. He falls on the other side of that ambiguity, and that keeps him alive, you know, absolutely keeps him alive throughout his 20s and early 30s.
And does he write anything about the catharsis in writing on this subject?
Yes, he does. It's entirely about the catharsis of that. What I was saying about the grief disorder at the beginning was that therapists recommend that people talk into a tape recorder so that the grief is contained within a tape. The goal is to show that grief, like the tape, can be picked up or put away. So he says, I hope to make this book my tape, something that can be contained, you know, in a book form. He eventually comes to the realisation that the tragedy isn't mine, it's actually hers, you know. The accident may have formed him, but he's grown up now. This is the extraordinary sort of journey that he's had over the book, and it's a loathsome term, I think, in a way. Journey. It's a term that's been overused and over-egged in films and literature and whatever. But this is you'd have to say an entirely emotional journey. He's now.
Well, when you said earlier he's writing cold hard facts, he's writing personally.
It's one of the most bravest things I think a novelist has, and certainly a novelist has ever done. It's also beautifully written. One of the points about this, it is beautifully written. He is you know, he's an amazing writer. I mean, for instance, it's very elemental writing. For instance, when he goes back to school and all the eyes are boring into his back, he describes that when his name is called in a register, the feel of pause and hush in the room is like a deer scenting something strange, you know. Well, when he goes to her funeral, he says, my heart was a live bird nailed to my chest. You know? So
this is Darin Strauss, and it's out this week on Beautiful Books.